watch Survivor, and when the show ends, you really wanna talk about it with like-minded friends. It might be hard to find some, but don't you shed a tear. Check out the Purple Rock Podcast, and this is what you'll hear. John will make some dumb jokes, Andy likes to yell and curse, and if they're not available, the backup hosts are so much worse. Spend the whole time being jerks, telling you you're wrong, and so we got this other jerk to sing you our theme song. It's the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast.
Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast. I am John. Andy's out this week, so subbing in for him is my co-host Brad, who, just like Heidi, is suddenly appearing out of nowhere right in the middle of the season with thoughts and opinions that we didn't know previously existed. So, welcome back to the podcast, Brad. Long time no see.
Yeah, it has definitely been a while. Haven't been on this season. I think I only was on one time last season, but it is good to be back.
Yeah, you didn't miss much by being on not so often last season. There's a stark contrast between that one and this one, but let's talk about that contrast because we'll start the way we always do. What did you think of this episode? And since this is your first appearance of the season, tell me some overall thoughts on the season as well.
So this episode, I was not as high on, but that might be because, well, no, I mean, it's relative to the previous 2 weeks, which were very good episodes, in my opinion, like really high watermarks for the season. So coming off of those two high points, I think like if you're not living up to that standard, it just relative to those is going to feel like more of a letdown. But as we'll get into in the episode, I really thought both of the twists that we saw this week were just really stupid and asinine. So I think that also colors my negative impression of the episode. But even then, all that aside, I feel like the season overall is going fairly well. I feel like every time that I'm on, like since season 40, when you or Andy asked me this question, my answer is always like, it's fine. It's perfectly serviceable, perfectly cromulent season of Survivor.
This one, however, you're saying it also in that cromulent level?
Maybe slightly above where we were at for 41 to 43, but I don't think we've hit some of the heights that we had, even like Millennials versus Gen X. I feel like I was having more fun to go that far back to Millennials versus Gen X. But I guess that is still a good sign because I'm taking out David versus Goliath because that's like a ridiculous season to compare any season to. Like it's
Sure.
not a fair comparison. But then if I'm really searching for a newbie season that I thought was good, that wasn't David or Goliath, I guess I'm going all the way back to Millennials versus Gen X, which would have been 33. So 5 years ago, 10 seasons ago, I guess overall that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm thinking too, if you're making a pull that deep, then this season's not doing that bad. If you're
Right.
if you're saying like hasn't been as good as a great season. Well,
Right.
I mean, that's a high bar.
Yeah.
Personally, I share some of your objections to this past episode. I enjoyed it for the most part, but it made itself hard to love.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly inflicted some things on us that just, it got in its own way in ways that we'll discuss shortly. But I think the one thing that, you haven't been around this season, so I need to know before we move on, what's your stance on dork love? Do dorks deserve love?
Dorks deserve love because they are oftentimes incapable of loving themselves. So you have to find someone else to love you because otherwise who's going to love you?
Oh, that's so deep. Yeah, so obviously there's been a season-long Matt and Franny arc, which we'll get to shortly, but let's start at the start of the episode because at the very beginning, we see Danny doing his Danny thing, being very hyperactive, always has to be thinking or doing something. Maybe not always thinking, definitely always doing something. But this time he's saying, we've got to put a target on Lauren. Do you see the reasoning for that? Is that the right move?
I think that there's this sort of like Sokka Ratu beef that's sort of bubbling because there I think it was 5 of one and 4 of the other or something like that was coming into the merge. The two tribes are sort of sizing each other up as each other's biggest threats. And so if you just sort of run down the roster of who on Ratu Danny could even be targeting, we know he's not going to target Brandon. That's pretty baked into the calculus. I don't think he would target Kane, either in part because he doesn't see Kane as a threat or because for whatever reason, it's a mystery, but he could be, connecting with the other white guy in the cast.
Maybe he can't remember Kane's name. I hear that's common.
It's hard to vote for him, if you don't know what his name is.
Exactly
that. And then Jamie, he has a connection to from her time on Sokka, which I don't think is as strong as the original Sokka members, but just sort of process of elimination. You're landing on Lauren, and then you throw in she has a double vote, which I don't know why that's the thing that's scaring everyone when you've had literally 12 idols floating around between the 3 beaches. I don't know why a double vote is all of a sudden spooking everyone, but I can see how out of the 4 Ratus that you're trying to land on someone, I can see the reasoning that gets you to Lauren.
So here's why I think his flaw is. Why? And I mean, I get that, this isn't necessarily his actual motivation, but if you're floating that it's that she's got 2 votes, I'm thinking if you're Danny, maybe not set the precedent that we want to go after people with advantages, right? We saw in this episode, his spot got blown up with that fake idol. We definitely did not see it on screen, but I guarantee you that Matt did tell Franny at the very least. We can assume that anything Matt knew in this game, Franny knew as well. I feel like you don't have to make too much of a leap on that one. So, Danny, the fact that he has an idol and that information is now at least probably out there, or it's believed strongly enough by Matt. He wasn't positive, I guess, because he was still thinking at the end that maybe he did have an idol. But at the very least, he probably floated that information out there to Franny and or other people. So I don't think if you're Danny, you want to set up this precedent that oh man, we got to get rid of these people with these advantages, especially because 2 votes is far less of an advantage than an immunity idol.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. I think Danny, in his mind, is still operating that no one knows about his idol at all. And it, truly, honestly, is only because of the chance conversation between Brandon and Matt. I don't think anyone on Sokka could have pieced it together without Brandon mentioning there is a fake idol that comes with the real idol. So given that Danny didn't know that the conversation has happened, and I think even now, actually, he was targeting Lauren before that conversation even happened. He probably thinks he's a very slick operator and that he's still under the radar with his idol. So I can maybe excuse him for still thinking that he had cover for that. But yeah,
at some point though, there's going to be talk, right? And what's really funny in this case is that we'd seen Danny and Brandon have this big bonding moment right in front of Carolyn's face, completely ignoring her. And Brandon is essentially the one that sells Danny out, obviously inadvertently. So Danny and Brandon can't be that close because Brandon either doesn't know about Danny's idol or didn't care enough to try to protect that information. And I'm assuming it's more that he doesn't know about Danny's idol.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that he doesn't know about Danny's idol. I don't think it's the sort of thing that Danny would have brought up in that lunch, especially with Carolyn there. And since they've hit the merge, I just don't think they've had the opportunity to have a conversation like that, but also they probably feel like they're on opposing factions at the moment, and maybe they'll team up once the numbers start whittling down. But I don't know that they see each other as their number ones right now.
Right. Definitely don't seem tight enough to have shared that information. I don't think we've gotten confirmation that Danny shared his idol with anybody. And I would assume that Danny's the type of player that is keeping that information from everybody. I think he views that as power, keeping that knowledge out of everybody else's game planning. I think he views that as an advantage for him.
Yeah,
but again, you have to assume.
And I'll add on to that he did not tell anyone, and that was actually part of the reasoning why he put the fake idol back in the birdcage, was not just to fake out Matt and have Matt have the false sense of security of an idol, but to have it very publicly be seen of like, Matt got the idol, and so therefore it is not me, or something like that.
But again, you have to assume that if it was that way on your beach, it was that way on the other beaches as well.
True.
So that information can get out there, whether, it's from Brandon or anybody else that might have gotten the idol. No one seems to necessarily know that Carolyn has it either. However, there are people who could have passed that information along. So risky premise for Danny to suggest that, oh no, we need to get rid of people who have these advantages in the game. But more importantly, let's get to the first disaster of the episode. Oh, not to influence your opinion, although I think I know where your opinion's going on this. What are we doing with this merge? What is happening? Do you like what's happening? I'm assuming this is a no.
No, it's at least Calvin Ball has an ethos, right? Like, there's an ethos
right.
to the unstructured. It's like, this it honestly feels like pure spaghetti being thrown at the wall. This twist in particular for this episode, it was dumb. It was lazy. I hated it. I tweeted this while I was live tweeting, but I don't hate twists, because they're twists. I don't hate twists for the sake of twists, but I want twists to force the players to make hard choices. The twist is only interesting when it forces a player to make a choice about when to, play an advantage, or how to play an advantage, or they're forced sort of back into a corner a little bit. This twist, in my opinion, didn't force anyone to really do anything besides maybe change their calculus on how I'm going to vote for 5 people as opposed to 12. It just, to me, it was, I don't know, it feels like very lazy game mechanics. There's nothing really intriguing about it to me. And so for that reason, I feel like, given that we haven't had a straight up, 11-person vote, 12-person vote, 10-person vote, those are sometimes where you get the best maneuvering, because there's so many different social variables that people are trying to maneuver. And it's just, this version of the game that we're playing, it's sucking everything out of the gameplay.
Yeah. And I think you're kind of hitting on what my point was going to be, which is that you're fixing a problem that didn't exist. I don't think there was anything inherently broken with the post-merge vote. It's inherently dramatic, right? As you said, there's potentially so many moving pieces. When you have 10 or 11 people all together, they're voting for the first time. Are they going to try to split votes? Are they going to, there's a lot of different ways that vote can break. And you're kind of kicking the can on that. Well, no, that you don't need to do that. This vote was already going to be interesting, just because we're going to potentially see where everybody stands, who might have formed an alliance, who's going at whom. Those sorts of things are interesting. And I think you just neuter that here. And I'm with you on the idea of twists are fine. I think twists that alter, game dynamics and make people reconsider how they're playing their game, also fine within reason. But I think here, you made it so that only 4 out of 11 people were eligible to be targets. It just, I guess in the Probst podcast, he said he likes them having nowhere to hide, but that was the case the entire pre-merge. They're in such small tribes, they had nowhere to hide then either. So at this point, they should be having the room to maneuver, and you just took that away from them. I don't understand, what the logic is on this. If this is something that you desperately wanted to do, if you have to do it after this first merge vote, right? You might have established some sort of alliances, voting blocks, whatever on this first vote, then fuck that up on the second one, right? Force them to change what just happened. Fine. It didn't fit, I think, in terms of gameplay or in terms of narrative. What did you think?
Yeah, I think you're making a good point there. And in terms of, quote unquote, not leaving them anywhere to hide, that doesn't scan to me just in terms of, as you're saying, like where you're placing this in the chronology of the season. Given that you just got on the same beach with these people about 2 days ago. And so then, like, even with that timeline and also the fact that you're crunching down the season into 26 days, even some of the people who you're on your tribe with, you don't know that well. I think Kane even said it at Tribal last episode that he's like, I've been on the same beach with some of these people from day one, and I still don't entirely know what they're about. Like for Jeff to say that it's about making sure you don't have anywhere to hide, there's no like sort of that implies that you're supposed to have this social mastery of all the dynamics between you and everyone else on your tribe. It's really about being the master of the social gameplay and the maneuvering, when in reality, because you haven't had enough time to build those connections, it just goes back to what colors your buff. And that ultimately then just makes it that people are getting, swap screwed over and over and over again. If you keep swapping people and doing these split group tribals, if this is really a thing that they're committed to doing, which it seems like they do every season now, yeah, you do it at, like you're saying, 8 or 9, or maybe even 10 if you have to push it. But doing it immediately after the merge is it's too early. It really doesn't do anything.
I think one of the lessons they should have probably taken away from some of the recent seasons is that once you start adding in too many different game-changing dynamics here, people might start to get conservative. And you don't want that for your show. You want them to be, taking risks and doing things that make for good TV, make for a good game. And I just, you don't want them to retreat into these like passive, conservative, risk-averse moves. You want entertaining television. And I think that needed to be part of the calculus in determining whether you have this twist, which I'm with you. I hated it. I thought it sucked. There was, however, one small bit of gameplay that was involved, because I think there was a potentially interesting decision to be made. And that was, should Franny have thrown that challenge? What do you think?
I think once Matt dropped out of the challenge, yes, she should have thrown it. Just because at that point you're weighing, the honor of a win, which is a big deal. I don't want to take that away. That for someone to be the clear winner of a challenge, there's a lot of, prestige that comes with that, like personal gratification. I'm not going to take away the value of a peanut butter and jelly, right? Like,
sure,
when you're starving, like, let's just count that for what it is. Given how broken she was when Matt was voted out, I'd be like, yeah, I think in that moment she would like, I would give up the challenge win and the sandwiches to have him back on the beach. So sort of from a post, perspective, yeah, I think she should have dropped once Matt was out of the challenge and she knew she was immune.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is once she has that immunity, because she got it fairly early, before the challenge even started, like Probst is telling the rules, and I'm saying to my wife, like, oh man, you're going to, if you win for your side, that's when you have to decide, do I want to go to tribal, right? You're going to look at who's going to be on the mat with you, who could potentially go to tribal, and then look at the other side, like, oh, where are my allies at? Like, that's some calculus you probably should have done before the challenge. And I get that, I'm sitting here comfortably and well fed in my house. However, this cast is mostly, longtime Survivor fans. And I feel like they probably should have thought of things like that, right? I think at a certain point, yes, you are all caught up. It's the excitement of the challenge. You want to win it, blah, blah, blah. But even having said that, there are people in previous seasons who knew, like, oh yeah, I'm in a challenge right now, but it's the family reward and it's a danger to win this. Like, they would have the foresight to say, like, no, this is not worth my time and effort. I think similarly, Franny was standing there a long ass time. She was standing there long enough for 4 people on the other side to fall out from the time that she'd already gotten immune. She could have thought through this and figured out, like, oh man, there is at least some degree of risk that my closest ally is gone. And now maybe in theory, she didn't care about that. Although I think in reality, judging by her reactions, she definitely did. So, at some point, no one's going to blame her that she didn't outlast 4 other people on the other side, drop in the middle of that challenge and be like, well, I'm immune. And, potentially then you can take out Danny. There's moves to be made, and Matt would be safe. Franny would be safe. I think strategically that was the move for her. And I'm kind of disappointed that she didn't think about that.
And I think it's not even just protecting Matt, although that's probably, like her number one priority. But, whether she targets Danny or not, just in terms of which vote is going to go down easier, if you look at the lineups for each group, which, like you said, Franny could do, before you even step up on the beam, Matt is the only person from Soka in his group versus, you've got Franny and Heidi and Danny and, you don't even need more at that point because it's 3 out of 5.
That's it. Yeah, you need 3.
So you've already, if you just go based off of, tribe allegiances, you've got a majority. You have better connections with these people, and you can work with them to, as you're saying, control, this vote or exert more control over this vote versus Matt is truly just up a creek.
Right. And, in the reverse, I guess Carson would have then joined their group as well. So it could have been 6 and maybe you're tying. However, we later found out, not that she could have game planned for this, but we later found out that there was an advantage that went to the group that won the challenge. And they could have had a vote controlled and made sure that their side won. Also could have been the opposite direction and made sure that their side lost, or at least made the odds better that their side would lose. I didn't like it strategically from Franny. I felt like it wasn't great for her to have not thought through that. And again, this is all under the assumption that she did want to keep Matt, which I think is pretty clear. Gameplay aside, obviously she enjoys working with him, and whether it's in her best interest to keep him or not, I don't know. But I think that she and Matt both believed that it was in their best interest to stick around and stay together and work together.
Well, actually, we'll say this, given that I think we know now that they're still together, like after filming, like present day, I think they're still somewhat romantically involved. So
look at you giving the cute updates.
I think that was someone in our Slack posted that. So
it was.
Yeah, okay. I want to make sure I'm not.
But you're breaking the news to the general public here.
Well, that'll get out from everyone who's
sure
in Atlanta last night. But no, like if they had stayed together throughout the game for longer, I mean, who's to say that there wouldn't be bad blood? Because at a certain point, maybe one turns on the other to eliminate the threat of a showmance. Maybe if this, becomes a long-term thing for them, this actually could have been the best case scenario. Is true love worth $1 million?
No. Oh, I thought that was was that rhetorical? All right. So briefly, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, Heidi emerged. Oh my God, Heidi, who we actually commented upon for being nearly invisible and completely forgettable, almost as much as Zayn. Why did Heidi suddenly decide that Jam Jam should be her choice? And was that the right choice?
So to answer the question of, is it the right choice? That depends on her objective. And I don't know that we're going to know that until next episode, if we know it at all.
Right.
If she wanted Jam Jam out, then no, she should not have been publicly saying, I want you to vote for Jam Jam, because I feel like everyone on the tribe sort of knows the state of play, that Soka's gunning for Ratu and Ratu's gunning for Soka. So if she announces, I want Jam Jam gone, I feel like that incentivizes Ratu to vote against her and therefore for Matt. Right. So if let's just say, that Brandon and Lauren and Jamie don't care between who of Matt and Jam Jam are going, they're sort of splitting hairs to figure out who it is, then that would, Heidi's declaration of, I want Jam Jam gone could push them in the other direction. But if she was actually targeting Matt, which she hinted at, that might be her motivation before they walked off the tribal, then yes, just based on results, that was the right choice. And I think
Point to that scoreboard.
The reverse psychology of it, worked out for her.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that if if she wanted to take the shot at their tribe and make it a tribal division thing, no half measures, right? Like you go in and you do try to take out Lauren. You take Jamie's vote and you try to take out Lauren, or you take Brandon's vote, you try to take out Lauren. Actually, Brandon would be the safer one because maybe she had some better relationship with Jamie. So yeah, if that was her goal, then yes, do that. But I got the impression, and again, we won't know, as you said, if ever, until at least next week. I got the impression she genuinely wanted Yam Yam gone, and she valued like a tribal loyalty thing over the possibility of working with Yam Yam. I guess she did, because the way she was talking about it was this theoretical future partnership with Yam Yam, right? So I guess in my view, it seemed like it was a bird in the hand type thing. Like, I'm going to take Matt, who's the known quantity, who I have worked with to some degree, rather than like rolling the dice that Yam Yam is the person that I think he is and that I'd want to work with him. That said, like, I'm very glad that the results turned out the way they did. I think, whether she intended to actually save Yam Yam by doing that or not, I don't know. That's some like 4D chess shit. I don't want to necessarily give her credit for that until I see like a confessional in the show revealing that to me. But just, personally here, and selfishly, was it the right move to target Yam Yam? No, fucking never. How dare you?
Mm-mm.
Never target Yam Yam. That's our boy.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's the other thing too, of like, I feel like in Heidi's calculus, I think maybe I'm misremembering what happened in the episode, but I feel like she was choosing between Matt and Yam Yam because the tribal conversation with everyone on her beach was, oh, this tribe is choosing between Matt and Yam Yam. It's going to be one of the two of them gone. So in Heidi's calculus, it's, well, which one do I prefer to go or stay? Let me use my control of vote to push in that direction, as opposed to looking more big picture of there's 5 people. It's essentially a 3-on-2 split. And if you, as you say, take a vote and stick it on Lauren, that would be enough for Matt and Yam Yam to both vote Lauren, and then you're 3-2, right? And barring any sort of idle shenanigans, there's your vote, and you save both your ally Matt and your potential partner Yam Yam. So it didn't have to be either or; it could have been both and.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is if that was your motivation, take that shot.
Right.
That shot was there for you. And since she had to publicly state who she wanted that vote to go for, Yam Yam and Matt can then both hear that and say, oh shit, we can actually do this now. And whether they would have had the time to scramble and change their votes or not, who knows? I tend to think that Probst is not going to tell them to sit down and shut up. On that same front, I did have another thought too, because we did see Carolyn very upset at the possibility that Yam Yam might be going home. Do you think Carolyn could have saved Yam Yam with her idol? My thought is generally yes.
I think I want to think that the rules are no, but I do think that like in unprecedented situations, Probst does, favor whatever makes good for good TV. So for Carolyn to stand up in the jury box, sprint across the set, and like play an idol for Yam Yam, I don't see any situation where Probst says, "Go sit down, back to 1. We're taking that shot again."
Yep. Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like if you being Carolyn stood up with confidence and was like, walked across in a tribal that you're not supposed to be participating in, and I was like, no, I'm playing this for Yam Yam, or just hands it to him, he's not going to stop you. Like that. You're right. His like primary concern is preservation of entertaining television, more so than some like arbitrary rule structures of this game. So yeah, if she had desperately wanted to save him, I think she probably could have. She could have played that idol. Fortunately, though, she didn't have to. She kept it for herself. And Yam Yam is safe. Oh, what a blessing. That said, we've talked about how Heidi used that control of vote advantage. But what did you think of it as a new game mechanic? Did you enjoy that advantage?
I didn't. This is another one that I thought was dumb. And that is what makes it sort of ironic that just like 1 minute ago, we were both saying, like, yeah, Probst is in favor of things that makes for good TV. I felt like this was not. It was just very contrived. I feel like they should have just made it a steal a vote or just let Heidi vote. That's honestly what I thought this was going to be when they started having them look for keys. I'm like, oh, Heidi's still safe, but she gets to vote with everyone else. She gets her power back or whatever. I feel like that would have been maybe the cleanest way to do it. And like for her to stand up and publicly announce essentially who her vote is. I don't remember a time that we've had a public announcement of a vote like through game mechanics before. Obviously, people have like publicly announced Denise or something like that.
Right.
But it was like I feel like in my memory the first time that they've done something like this, and it felt like they had to do it because they were trying to shoehorn more twists in to make more drama out of the fact that the groups were split up. Right. Like if you're doing this in a group of 11 where all 11 people are voting, this twist doesn't make any sense. Just make it a steal a vote. Right. It's more about the fact that you weren't in communication with the other group, which, by the way, was dumb. I thought it would have been so much better TV if you're insistent on only 5 people voting, you can still have 11 people talking. I feel like that still would have been, a good outcome entertainment wise. But then, to get back to the control a vote, it's like, I don't really see any other circumstances where you're going to use this advantage again, aside from you're on separate beaches and you get to control someone else's vote in a group that you're not voting with. Like it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And similarly, I think the publicly stating who you want targeted, like, I guess the idea is that you want to create some drama by that public statement of who you're targeting. Because then also, if you're targeting someone, it better be a kill shot, right? Or you're like catching blowback for it. Yep. And in this case, it was not. So, maybe that then does lead to more entertaining television down the road where Jam Jam is now like, oh my God, Heidi, you came at me. I can't believe you. How dare you? But I think part of it for me is just that I hated that we even had the split teams thing and so few people eligible as targets. So my assessment of this advantage is clouded by that. I guess it is a way to exert some influence when you're not really involved in tribal council. But as you said, why not just have them be involved in tribal council then? Why not just let Heidi vote? Or there are other ways to resolve that. And I think this one I'm hoping, because, Survivor will throw things against the wall and they don't always stick. And to their credit, oftentimes they will abandon them. Not always, but oftentimes they're willing to abandon them. And I hope this one gets abandoned. I didn't see much that we gained from it. Other than, of course, pointing at the scoreboard and Jam Jam surviving.
Right. I feel like maybe Jeff just needs more famous friends who can dissuade him from like just following his first gut instinct of what would be a good twist. Sort of like an anti Tyler Perry. Just to be like, maybe not.
Jeff has a very interesting stable of famous friends. It runs the gamut. We should explore that in some future episode. But instead, let's explore the friendship that we actually got to see on TV, which was, we got confirmation, at least on Carolyn's end, of the return of Yam Yam and Carolyn. They're besties again. Are you happy that we have this renewed connection, Brad?
I am happy insofar as if they team up, both of them are more likely to last longer in the season, which is one of my reading interests. I want to see both of them last longer. And, I like that they realize that they need each other. I don't want to put, the same way that like I was very hesitant to be like, Danny, like New York, first responder, kind of crazy Tony. I don't want to go there, but our Yam Yam and Carolyn, the new Malcolm and Denise, could they Matt sing their way to the end? Might be hyperbolic. And I don't know if we should go there.
No, but I had the same thought because we saw in this episode Yam Yam, Carolyn, and Carson all sitting there, and they're all like, they're flying under the radar. These two other tribes are basically going at each other. And other than, of course, we saw Heidi targeting Yam Yam. generally, it is not the discussion that you need to get rid of Yam Yam, Carolyn, or Carson, right?
Right.
So this is a situation where they could definitely just skate by and help the other sides take each other out. And then at the end, just suddenly have the numbers advantage. Like, not the other sides not notice what's happening because they need those numbers. And then suddenly you've got Carson and the two weirdos up against you. And that outcome is something that I'm very interested in, just as I was with Malcolm and Denise. I'd like to see that kind of dynamic. I think it's still very possible. I really want to see Carolyn getting deep into this game, just because I want to see if people eventually respect her, because I think she's actually fairly decent at Survivor, but because she's such a weirdo, and frankly, because she looks like Pigpen, she is just constantly covered in dirt, and I don't understand why. Like, how are you constantly filthy? Like, there is a body of water right nearby you, and I love it.
I mean, well, there are
like,
also people with like running plumbing who don't like to bathe. You know, like those people
true.
also exist.
Look, I am not saying this to knock her. I genuinely enjoy that every time I see her on my screen, she's just covered in filth. I don't know how it happens. I enjoy it. And I get why, she is being dismissed by other players, but I really want to see some like Usual Suspects ending where Carolyn gets to a final tribal council, and not to spoil that movie. I'm all about movies. But yeah, and then suddenly she stands up and she's like, hey, just so you guys know, I was running this shit all along, and have everyone's mouths drop like, oh my God, really? And just have that realization click for them. Like, that would be a narratively satisfying arc for this season.
Yes. And I feel like she could be set up to do it. I mean, the only way that she's going to get her wings clipped too quickly is if she loses Yam Yam, and then she just doesn't have anyone to work with, really. And I will say, if we are drawing this comparison to Malcolm and Denise, I don't think Malcolm and Denise were catching this much heat like straight out the merge, because Yam Jam's caught votes at both tribals, right? Last tribal and this tribal. And I'm pretty sure, actually, no, I have it in front of me. Malcolm did not get any votes until the Pete boot. So that would have been like final 7, final 8.
Yeah, he skated by for a bit.
Yeah.
And I think Denise didn't catch any, did she?
No, I don't think she did.
Yeah.
Not until the very end.
Right.
Yeah, when you had like
when it was
Penner
too late.
started. Yeah, Penner threw some on there. Malcolm was a single vote for Denise when he was eliminated, and Abby Maria as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, I would genuinely enjoy seeing that, because I think that this, like, at least with Malcolm and Denise, like, it was an unlikely pairing, I think, but you could see the Survivor chops in both of them. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's as readily evident with these two, right? Like, I think it's the exact opposite. I think they're much more likely to be dismissed. Yam Yam, because he's like so goofy and like he's very funny, he's super disarming. Like, I think it's a very different vibe from Malcolm and Denise, and I personally would like to see how this shakes out as they get closer to an end game, and if at any point along there do people then start respecting them as threats. I suppose we shall see. That said, there is one more narrative arc that I wanted to discuss, because I think it's been overlooked, although I say that as someone who's not really on Twitter or Reddit, so I don't know what they're saying in these places. The narrative arc of Matt, though, like, I just want to briefly touch on this. So, in the very beginning of the game, he loses votes. He loses 2 votes. He finds a fake idol. He develops exactly 1 ally, an ally that everyone knows he is obsessed with. And then he ends up being one of only 4 people that could be voted for out of 11 at a post-merge vote, and then doesn't bring his bag for his shot in the dark, or even his attempted, like, attempt to play that fake idol. This was some next level Charlie Brown shit. Like it was, we made fun of what was his name? Owen for the constant Charlie Brown shit. Like Matt's arc is not really that far off from that, right?
I think it's funny that that's how you're perceiving Matt, of this like, comedy of errors sort of, story. Because like in our breakdown, you had basically Matt's legacies on the items. The only thing I wrote here is big wife guy energy.
Yes.
So that's really the only way that I perceive him. I feel like that is maybe more of the slant that I'm getting, because I am on Twitter versus you're not, of like, when you talk about Matt, you're talking about Matt in the context of Matt and Franny. So I feel like his legacy is literally being, one of the top 3 wife guys in Survivor history. It's him, Boston Rob, and, let's throw Jeremy in there.
Okay. I mean, wow. What an exclusive group to be in, though, man. I think those other 2 might have had some more success than he did. Yeah, I mean, it's just really the bulk of his narrative was about how he was so into Franny, which is kind of funny because I think, generally, if there is a showman's angle, it's usually that the woman's story gets short shrift, right? Like she's just cast aside as like her whole vibe is just that she's very into this guy. In this case, it's just like, no, Matt is just googly eyed puppy dog, just following her around. And now his arc has ended. And I think, now we're set up to see what happens with Franny, right? Does Franny go on the rampage? Is she an independent woman who's going to run this game on her own? What do you see for Franny going forward?
Well, no, I think it is funny that you said that Matt had puppy dog eyes, because I did tweet as soon as the episode ended that Franny is about to John Wick this entire post-merge. I feel like you just shot her dog and now she's going to go ham on the rest of you.
And that's entirely possible. I think Franny actually does have that in her. Like, I think she's a legit contender this season, despite the fact that I didn't like that she didn't think through how to pursue that challenge, win or lack thereof. I think she's potentially got some moves she can make, and I'm interested to see how she responds to losing her number one ally, like the one person that she seemed to be able to tell everything to. It'll be interesting to see if she tries to find someone to replace that, or instead sort of just makes it a much more flexible game going forward, right? She's not tethered to anybody.
Right, because I was about to ask you, like, who do you think is next in line to be basically Franny's number one? Like, who is she going to start, hatching schemes and working out plans with?
Right, and I think that's the issue, is that we don't have a great feel for that based on what we've seen so far, because the content has been so heavily skewed towards Franny and Matt just only being in line with each other. Obviously, there is some degree of working with the other people that were on their tribe. We'd seen them talking before about trying to get Josh out. They were going to work with Danny. They're going to work with Heidi. So, is Heidi right that, maybe then Franny becomes closer to her? Maybe. I don't even know. Like, what are her other options out there? Personally, I would love to see her go through and just like supplant Carson in that Weirdos Alliance. That would be fun for me. Except I need it to happen in a way that Carson thinks he's controlling things and just absolutely gets owned by Yam Yam and Carolyn. Like, it needs to be Yam Yam and Carolyn knife him in the back, and then they pick up Franny in the Carson spot. Like, that I would enjoy. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have a suspicion on who her next ally might be?
I think it could be Heidi, just due to the Soka connection. I think after Matt, she's probably closest with Heidi on that tribe. I actually think it could be Carson. So you're saying supplant Carson. I actually think she could latch on to Carson for the same, big nerdy energy that she got from Matt. Not necessarily in the same romantic way, but I feel like if you talk about, who are the big dorks on the tribe, Carson and Kane are probably the ones who are remaining. But I think Carson is closer to Matt's energy and also is more of Franny's equal in terms of a strategic partner. Because I'm positive that's something that Franny values in a partnership is the ability to, strategize and, sort of think things through with someone. And I've never really gotten that energy off of Kane.
So you're saying though that dork on dork love, your official statement is that it is monogamous. That she cannot then pick up Carson and Adam. She can't make a triad here. Is that what you're saying?
Look, I don't want to say that. Well, no, I'm going to say that some dorks don't get freaky like that, and some dorks are major freaks. So you know what? I couldn't possibly start attaching labels on this.
You know what? Having said that, like, obviously I was joking, but how funny would it be if she just immediately moved on from Matt? Obviously, we know they're still together, but it would be hilarious, right? If she just was like, oh, well, he's gone. Who else is left?
I don't think we've ever had like a full like Black Widow season of dorks, but you know what? On any show, it's going to be this one if it happens.
I mean, it'd be great. I'm here for it. It apparently won't happen, sadly. Unless, you know what, baby, she rebounded back to Matt. Maybe that does happen in postseason. She realizes her mistake and ends up back with Matt. All right. Anything else you're looking forward to in these next few episodes?
I just hope that we sort of like slow down and decelerate the twists. I would love to have a very not straightforward, right? Not in just like a normal, like vote split, like, sort of mega majority vote. But I do want to have a vote with a big group where we don't have, 5 different twists flying around. Just see how people do in the big group because we haven't had one of those votes yet, and just see the social dynamics. I would love a little bit of that. I would love a little bit of some people to stand out for like, in terms of a returnee season. This is something that we were talking about a few days ago, but I was like, as I was thinking through it more, I'm like, I don't know exactly who I feel like stands out in terms of like, I want to see more of them from like past seasons, like maybe, Shan, Ricard, High, people of that group or of that genre of character. For this season, I feel like Carolyn, Yam Yam, definitely standing out. I feel like they're for sure going to have Carson come back. I am curious if there's anyone else in this cast who can pop the same way, because I would just like to see it if they do.
Yeah, and I think as long as you're keeping Carolyn and Yam Yam around for a while, and I guess, you know what, you can give Carson something, because I think he does have some sort of presence in that, like, I think he's got people that want to root against him. He has some people that want to root for him. So there's at least something there, right? There's at least he's inspiring some sort of opinion from people. Whereas last season, there were so many times that I was like, I don't care. I have no attachments to any of these people. Right. Yeah, I think as long as you have those people sticking around for the season, it just sort of amplifies the rest of the cast, right? Like it helps carry the show in a way that doesn't make then the Brandons or the Laurens have to carry the load of like bringing entertainment value. Like Brandon and Lauren might be useful players or good players even, I don't know, but they're not necessarily carrying the entertainment load of the show. And we should actually briefly, since you sort of referenced it, we should discuss the potential for an upcoming returnee season, because we did find out I think confirmed rumor that next season is going to be 90-minute episodes. And, we don't have any sort of confirmation at all. But if it was a returnee season, that certainly would make them much more confident in the ability to get 90-minute episodes, I would think. So yeah, let's quickly take a little divergence here and talk about some returnees that we'd like to see in that season, if that's actually going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, last season, Carla, I would think, could come back, and I really I'd really be stretching to find anyone else in that cast who I'm like, oh yeah, no, let's throw them back in there.
Yep.
42, I feel like high. I feel like is a lock to come back at some point. Drea, I wouldn't mind seeing again. I thought she was fairly interesting in the time that she was there. And assuming just for the sake of the exercise that we're not going to throw winners in there,
Right.
Because typically, you don't pull from them that much. I feel like that's sort of where I land on 42. 41, I think I already said Shannon Ricard. And I forgot Evie. I wouldn't mind seeing Evie again. In terms of, the new era since past 40, I think that's sort of where we land. And then anyone besides that, let's just fill it out with everyone from David versus Goliath.
So I cannot believe you didn't start there, because the number one, like the person that you build the entire cast for a returnee season around is Angelina. That is the first fucking phone call you make. Like that, you don't. If she's not available, you just don't do the returnee season. That's
right.
it.
Right.
Because, if Angelina is not the first person that you call to when you're bringing back players, then you're failing at casting this show. And I think that for all the shit that Probst gets, and a lot of it very deservedly so, he knows, right? You make that call, you get Angelina back, and then, you fill in the cast with some other people. And that's it. I mean, really, for me, as long as she's there, sure, grab some other people around her. I don't care. I just want some more Angelina in my life. It'd be great if we got Yam Yam and or Carolyn, although I'm going to hold them back because who knows, maybe one of them wins this season. If one of them does, I would lean towards it being Carolyn and not Yam Yam.
Right.
Who, one of our commenters, by the way, referred to Yam Yam as Sparkly Sandra if he wins, which I loved. Like, what a great nickname. Anyway, I think it's unlikely Yam Yam wins, but yeah, you just start bringing back the people for me that, could carry 90 minutes of television program, and Angelina's a huge one. Like, she's your star, and then you just pick up other people who can play off of Angelina. You have to have some quote unquote straight men in there, not meaning heterosexual. Just from a comedy perspective, they have to be able to look at the camera when Angelina says her insane shit. And I would be all aboard. We haven't had a returnee season since Winners at War, which I, of course, loved.
Even before that, the last time that you had returnees. Oh, actually, no, that's wrong. I was about to say that it was Game Changers, but I forgot. I completely erased Edge of Extinction from my mind. So if you count four returnees with, a bunch of newbies, then in that case, that's a returnee season. I
kind of don't blame you for erasing Edge of Extinction from your mind. Not a whole lot of reasons to try to remember that one. That said, I guess we'll see. I think there had been some talk about how they're not necessarily interested in going back to the returnee well just yet. They just wanted to get a bunch of seasons under their belt, which is fine.
Which is fair. I think it's the right call, given sort of the way that Game Changers played out of this entire mismatch of talent, which led to really bad results.
Yeah, and I think, if you're going to cast as well as they did this season, that's fine. If you cast like you did last season, maybe then scrap that and go with returnees, because I feel like you'd have a better shot at getting a returnee cast. I am really down on last season, in case you can't tell. All right. So we sort of covered moving forward. Is there any other narrative arc you want to see? Any other people potentially teaming up, people working together, working against each other that you want to see in the next episode or the ones following it?
No, I think we covered pretty much all of it.
All right. Yeah. As I've mentioned, I want to see Carolyn working with people. Like, I am fascinated by the dynamic of Carolyn talking to others, just dirt all over her face, trying to convince them that she's a serious person while she stares off into the distance. It's great. Like, I want to see more of that. And then her just coherently talking to us in confessionals and just blowing me away with like, oh no, you're accurately assessing situations. This is amazing. Why can't you do that in front of the other people? I genuinely think that she could in a final tribal council. I so hope it happens. All right. That said, we'll wrap this thing up. If you want to see our website, it is purplerockpodcast.com. You can comment on the episodes there. You can see how our fantasy league results are going, which reminds me, shit, I am not looking forward to scoring this week's episode. There's some iffy points to deal with, but that's okay. You can, of course, follow the show on Twitter. It's at Purple Rock Pod. Brad is at Purple Rock Brad. And I am at NPR. So please follow me. And anything else, Brad?
Watch Beef on Netflix.
Great. Hit some theme music.
This is the copyright-free outro to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. Thanks for listening.